songbirds singing, and you watch the clouds roll by. Then you're walking in the valley as the sun shines in a clear blue sky. You're welcoming your loved ones, and you can't believe your eyes. Yes, this earthly paradise was just around the corner. There's a house down in the valley and a house high on the hill. There is singing by the river as the water flows and turns the mill. The golden fields are waiting, let the harvesting begin. Once the world we're living in was just around the corner. It's great to share with friends who care the things that we looked forward to. Now every tear has disappeared. The world is young and life is new. There's the sound of happy voices and the scent of new mown hay. Now you're calling to your loved ones as you start another perfect day. Then we thank our God Jehovah for his tender loving care. Yes, the blessings we all share were just around the corner. And every day I smile and say, how good to see your happy face. 'Cause once it seemed I only dreamed that you'd be in my warm embrace. Waiting round the corner is a world I long to see. It's a promise from Jehovah, it's a guaranteed reality. And it's hard to get downhearted when I think of what's in store. It's the day I'm waiting for, and it's just around the corner. You can hear the songbirds singing, and you watch the clouds roll by. Then you're walking in the valley as the sun shines in a clear blue sky. You're welcoming your loved ones, and you can't believe your eyes. Yes, this earthly paradise was just around the corner. There's a house down in the valley and a house high on the hill. There is singing by the river as the water flows and turns the mill. The golden fields are waiting, let the harvesting begin. Once the world we're living in was just around the corner. It's great to share with friends who care the things that we looked forward to. Now every tear has disappeared. The world is young and life is new. There's the sound of happy voices and the scent of new mown hay. Now you're calling to your loved ones as you start another perfect day. Then we thank our God Jehovah his tender loving care. Yes, the blessings we all share were just around the corner. And every day I smile and say, how good to see your happy face. 'Cause once it seemed I only dreamed that you'd be in my warm embrace. Waiting round the corner is a world I long to see. It's a promise from Jehovah, it's a guaranteed reality. And it's hard to get downhearted when I think of what's in store. It's the day I'm waiting for, and it's just around the corner. You can hear the songbirds singing, and you watch the clouds roll by. Then you're walking in the valley as the sun shines in a clear blue sky. You're welcoming your loved ones, and you can't believe your eyes. Yes, this earthly paradise was just around the corner. There's a house down in the valley and a house high on the hill. There is singing by the river as the water flows and turns the mill. The golden fields are waiting, let the harvesting begin. Once the world we're living in was just around the corner. It's great to share with friends who care the things that we looked forward to. Now every tear has disappeared. The world is young and life is new. There's the sound of happy voices and the scent of new mown hay. Now you're calling to your loved ones as you start another perfect day. Then we thank our God Jehovah for his tender loving care. Yes, the blessings we all share were just around the corner. And every day I smile and say, how good to see your happy face. 'Cause once it seemed I only dreamed that you'd be in my warm embrace. Waiting round the corner is a world I long to see. It's a promise from Jehovah, it's a guaranteed reality. And it's hard to get downhearted when I think of what's in store. It's the day I'm waiting for, and it's just around the corner.
Friends, the Endecott family would like to warmly invite you here this afternoon to the memorial service for Brother Boyd Endecott. If you have not received a program, the program will be posted, will be attached to the chat link. You can click on it and download it. Many of you may have already received a program. We also are going to have Zoom meetings after the entire program so that you can come in and out as you please and visit with the family. We're going to briefly just show you what that image will look like. So if you haven't already been able to write down the Zoom meeting IDs and if there's a password, that way the family, you can talk with them, have an interchange of encouragement, and the family may come in and out two different ones. So you'll no doubt appreciate it and they will love it. If you have any stories, pictures, words of encouragement, or a video message you'd like to send the family, please do so at weloveYouBoyd@gmail.com. The Zoom meetings will start at 2 p.m. after this program. You may really have enjoyed that slideshow with the song at the beginning. If you do, you're going to really enjoy, right after our discourse, our talk, there'll be a nice video from the family highlighting aspects of Boyd's life. You'll really enjoy that too. So once again, everyone, we welcome all here. To get our program started, we're going to have a song and an opening prayer by Brother Rance Rayburn. The song we're going to sing together is song number 139. It's entitled, See Yourself When All Is New. We invite all to sing if possible. Once again, we thank everyone for being here. We'll now give our attention to Brother Mark Hollingshead, as he will deliver our memorial discourse for Brother Boyd Endecott.
We certainly do extend a warm welcome to everyone for being here this afternoon. Boyd Ray Endecott was born on July 27th, 1936 in Oilton, Oklahoma, to Emmett and Pearl Endecott. Boyd was the oldest of 4 siblings, and he had 2 sisters and 1 brother. Boyd and his wife, Nancy, met in Tonkawa, Oklahoma, while attending Northern Oklahoma Junior College. And they were married in 1956. They had 3 children, and they are James Samuel Endecott of Piedmont, Oklahoma, Karen Sue Gietler of El Reno, Oklahoma, and John Keith Endecott of Montgomery, New York. They also gained 3 more kids by marriage. They are Deborah Endecott, Sean Gietler, and Nelda Endecott. Boyd and Nancy also have 1 grandchild, Megan Jennings, and another that they gained by marriage, Trevor Jennings. Boyd and Nancy also have 2 great grandchildren. They are Lachlan and Wren Jennings. Boyd, as most of you are certainly aware of, passed away in death 1 week ago today on Sunday, May 10th, 2020. At the time, he was 83 years of age. When speaking about Boyd Endecott, a very, very significant event affected his entire life from that day forward. And that was when he was baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses on September 18th, 1965. Over the past week, I've received several emails from different brothers and sisters concerning how Boyd really affected their lives. And I'd like to share a few of these experiences with you, and perhaps as I share them, you yourself can relate to these experiences. Maybe they're just like experiences you had or similar. First of all, it was highlighted how Boyd was helpful. One brother shared his experience that back in the 60s, on a Saturday night, when his band broke down way out in the panhandle of Oklahoma, Boyd was contacted, and he came with a tow bar to bring that brother back with his vehicle all the way to central Oklahoma. Well, it took all night, and they arrived, but just in time to go home, take a shower, clean up, and attend the public meeting of Jehovah's Witnesses that morning. That brother added, "That's the kind of brother Boyd was." Boyd also had humor, as we all know. For example, in Chickasha, in the door-to-door ministry with a brother, they came to an area, as this brother related, that was maybe 3 blocks long. And on one side, there were houses, but on the other side, it was completely empty with no houses. So Boyd turned to the brother and he said, "You work that side and I'll work this side." Well, the brother remembers laughing to himself as he worked that inhabited side, and he looked over and saw Boyd nonchalantly walking up the uninhabited side. But then the brother added, it was absolutely one of his favorite memories of Boyd because of his humor. Interestingly, Boyd had more than just 1 daughter, Karen Sue Gietler. As it turns out, I found out that Boyd had numerous spiritual daughters who wrote me. One sister shared this. She said she always appreciated how Boyd would take her and her sister to get ice cream after field service, and also how he purchased new service bags to encourage them to pioneer, and they both ended up enjoying that privilege. She also added Boyd was always there for her. Another sister also said how Boyd encouraged her to pioneer and got her as well her first pioneer bag for field service after she signed up. But she said she also appreciated how Boyd was balanced and he wanted her to have time for recreation. For example, he sent her and Nancy, along with $20 he gave her, to the state fair to see a rodeo and a concert. Yet another spiritual daughter, with a smiley in her email, she said she especially appreciated Brother Endecott's, and I quote, bold and specific way of conveying things, end of quote. Yeah, Boyd certainly was direct at times, but in this regard, she added, as an example of this, regular pioneering, she said, it really was always understood by Boyd that you would regular pioneer when you finish high school. So he asked her, when is that going to happen? Well, she said, over the years, even though having to stop at times due to circumstances, she has now been able to be in the full-time service for 26 years. Boyd truly did enjoy working with young ones in theocratic activities. A sister related, when Boyd and Nancy moved to the Tuttle congregation, Boyd saw the potential of those young ones there to assist him with his assignments at assemblies and conventions. So she shared that Boyd utilized their abilities to make sandwiches, to work in the food stands, which was used at that time, and also in cleaning the convention site. She said, and I quote, Boyd needed them, and so did Jehovah, so we better show up and do our best and not let either Jehovah or Boyd down. Boyd, as we know, was a spiritual man, and several friends highlighted that aspect too. One brother shared how he appreciated Boyd's spiritual strength and his knowledge, and how he and his wife could always go to Boyd for any assistance that they needed. And in the end, Boyd would always make them feel better, he wrote. Another spiritual sister, a daughter, wrote that Boyd was an excellent teacher, and he had a strong influence on their family, spiritually speaking, with their 4 small children. She said, as Boyd would put it, to get the whole spiritual picture of any subject, Boyd really trained them as a couple and as a family how to find the who, the what, the where, and the why of a spiritual matter. And she still appreciates that to this day. In addition to being an elder in the local congregation, where many of us knew him and served in that local congregation, many remember how Boyd worked with the RBC as a volunteer. A sister wrote about that. She said, if it wasn't for Boyd, I would have never been able to join the hall builds. He took me and my sister under his wings, and he took us to every hall build he could. He always encouraged us to do more for Jehovah in every way that we could. Another brother wrote about his RBC experience as a very young individual. He said, I remember for some reason when I was 11 at the Kingdom Hall project in Enid, Oklahoma, I hung out in the first aid trailer because I was too young to work, but I still wanted to be there. And you know what? Boyd let me. He never forgot that. A sister, in talking about her experience at RBC with Boyd, recalled how he was always thoughtful, and he would bring her a chocolate candy bar at every RBC build. I've kind of come to the conclusion this past few weeks that she may not have been the only one that received some of Boyd's chocolate bars. But she continued. It was a small thing, but even if she wasn't there, he would remember her, and he would give that chocolate bar to her husband and make him promise not to eat it until he got home and gave it to her. My experience with Boyd and the Endecott family was that they were my spiritual family growing up when I came in the truth back in the early 70s. They had moved, as many of us are aware of, to the Clinton area to serve where the need is greater. So that meant that Boyd, who worked full-time in Oklahoma City, he would be driving to his job each day approximately 180 miles per day, Monday through Friday. And he did this for around 7 years. And many of us who were back in those Clinton days remember his green Dodge Dart with its standard gear shift on the column and with no air conditioning. Boyd actually drove that vehicle well over, by the time he sold it, over 300,000 miles. Think about that for just a minute with Boyd. Here you have a brother, lives in Clinton, going to Oklahoma City Monday through Friday. He did this every day, driving into the sun going east. At the end of the day, he's driving west going into the sun that way. He did it through ice, through rain, through snow, through heat, through cold, whatever it was. Boyd was diligent and faithful. Why? Why is that? Well, Boyd, as we all know, had a focus. He truly had focus, and he had a love for Jehovah and for the congregation that he was privileged to serve where the need was greater in Clinton. Most all of us got to know Boyd and the Endecott family that way. It's through our association as Jehovah's Witnesses. And Boyd and the Endecotts have been a spiritual family who have put kingdom interests first for many years here in Oklahoma. So, in just thinking about these experiences, and there were more, but just thinking about these experiences that we've shared here and how we all remember Boyd in this way, naturally, we are saddened because of the loss of his life at this time and how it affects each one of us. Well, very few things can cause more stress or heartache than the loss of a husband, the loss of a father, the loss of a good friend like Boyd was to most of us who are watching this afternoon. But grief or sorrow is really, we can say, a normal reaction to the loss of a loved one. For example, as recorded in the Bible in the book of Genesis, it states that even faithful ones like Abraham mourned and he grieved the loss of his beloved wife, Sarah. This was not just a quick emotion that was easily overcome, like flipping on a light switch or turning it off. No, it wasn't. And this is significant because when we think about Abraham, he's known among all of us as Jehovah's Witnesses as a man of faith, real faith. But even not just us, among the world's major religions, when you mention Abraham, even they recognize Abraham for this quality of faith. It really highlights that this is a deep emotion, and the scriptures indicate it took time for him to cope or deal with this circumstance involving his beloved wife. Hundreds of years later, in the book of John, when the man Lazarus had died, it was Jesus who showed sympathy, who provided comfort for those who were grieving at the time. Specifically at John chapter 11, in verse 35, it states that Jesus himself, quote, gave way to tears, end of quote. Jesus gave way to tears, even though he knew what he was going to do, and that is resurrect Lazarus. It saddened him greatly to see his friends stricken with grief. But Jesus' tears on that occasion reflected the feelings of his Father, who also has tender tender feelings for those who grieve and who also wants to comfort them. Notice what the psalmist said about our Father, Jehovah, at Psalm 34 and verse 18. Again, that scripture reference is Psalm 34 and verse 18. It states there, and I quote, "Jehovah is close to the brokenhearted. He saves those who are crushed in spirit." Or as the footnote says there, are discouraged. What a beautiful scripture to think about the feelings of our God and our Father Jehovah, who's close to the brokenhearted and those who are crushed or discouraged. But we might ask, how specifically does Jehovah help those of us who are discouraged? Well, one of the ways he does is through the pages of the Bible, which discusses quite a bit about this subject of death. For example, in reading the Bible, we learn that Jehovah, our God and our Father, is truly a God of wisdom, of justice, of love, and of power. And these qualities that Jehovah has that just permeate his personality are truly seen in various ways when it comes to this subject of death that we're talking about this afternoon. For example, as we read the Bible, we learn that death, it was never a part of Jehovah's original purpose for mankind. According to the scriptures, death is the result of Adam's disobedience. Yes, according to Genesis chapter 2 and Genesis chapter 3. And so, as a consequence, all of Adam's descendants, yes, obviously, all of us have inherited death. Romans chapter 5 and verse 12 explains it so logically and clearly. And it says there at Romans chapter 5 and verse 12, and I quote, "That is why, just as through one man sin entered into the world, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men, because they had all sinned." Yes, the Bible explains why we even have to deal with this very difficult circumstance of death. But very kindly, the Bible does not leave it at that. It further tells us of the condition of those who have died. And that was a very significant point to Boyd when he was alive. Yes, Boyd was aware of, Boyd learned, and taught that the Bible highlights at Ezekiel chapter 18, verse 4 and 20, that the soul, it's mortal. In fact, as that scripture highlights, it specifically can die. Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 5 and 10 also further state, "For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing at all." Even Psalm 146 and verse 4 says, "Their thoughts perish." So when we think about the condition of those who have died, these scriptures, what is it saying to us? Well, it becomes pretty clear of those who have died and their condition, because we might even compare it this way, as some have, to the life that we enjoy now would be compared to that of the flame of a candle. When the flame is put out, it doesn't go anywhere. It's simply gone. So we appreciate, as we think about this, we understand why death occurred, as explained in the Bible, and we've read just a few scriptures here highlighting the condition of those who are dead. But the Bible also gives us a sure hope that millions who have died will have the opportunity to indeed live again. It's one of the clearest teachings in the Bible. The resurrection hope is made possible by means of the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Indeed, as Matthew 20, verse 28 states, Jesus gave his life as a ransom in exchange for many. Christ's resurrection from death, it provides an absolute guarantee. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 22 explains it this way, saying, and I quote, "For just as in Adam all are dying, so also in the Christ all will be made alive." For a fact, God has appointed, God has chosen Jesus to raise the dead. Consider Jesus' words himself on this particular matter in the Bible at John chapter 5, verse 25, 28, and 29. Again, that scriptural reference is John chapter 5, verse 25, first of all, and then 28 and 29. John 5:25 says, and I quote, "Most truly I say to you, the hour is coming, and it is now, when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who have paid attention will live." But then Jesus continued on in verses 28 and 29. He said, "Do not be amazed at this, for the hour is coming in which all those in the memorial tombs will hear his voice and come out, those who did good things to a resurrection of life, and those who practice vile things to a resurrection of judgment." Boyd Endecott believed those words. And Boyd also believed that Spirit-anointed Christians are resurrected to heavenly life. But Boyd personally cherished that Jesus has other sheep, as John chapter 10 and verse 16 describes them, who will be resurrected to life in the earthly paradise. Yes, the Bible, in talking about this resurrection hope, has so much encouragement because it even further indicates that those who lived and died without an opportunity to understand, to apply Bible truth, they too will have the prospect of a resurrection. Consider this beautiful hope that's found at Acts 24 and verse 15. Again, that scripture is Acts 24 and verse 15. And it says there, and I quote, "And I have a hope toward God, which hope these men also look forward to, that there is going to be a resurrection of both the righteous and the unrighteous." Wow. Think about that and the implications of what that means as we contemplate this resurrection hope that's described in these verses, some of which, again, there's more, but just some of which we've considered. Death is, we could say, death is not the period in the story of life. Because of the resurrection, death can simply turn out to be a comma in the story of life, as it will be in Boyd's case. So, just kind of reflecting here for just a moment on the points that we've considered thus far, we can see from the scriptures why there's death. We also understand the condition of those who have died. But yet, most importantly, we appreciate that the Bible gives a sure hope that Boyd and millions who have died before him will indeed have the prospect of living again forever on a paradise earth. So wherever we're at this time, watching and listening to this memorial service for our friend Boyd Endecott, how can we benefit from this unfortunate experience of having to talk about this subject? Well, there are several ways. First of all, the funeral service today that we're having, it reminds us of the shortness and the uncertainty of life. Our day-to-day life that we may take for granted or just assume is going to go on and on and on is not really guaranteed at all. The plans that we have, say even for this afternoon later or tomorrow or in the days, the weeks, the months ahead, those plans may turn out to be very different than what any of us can imagine at this time. But also, this occasion should make us stop and think about how we're using our life right now. By the way we live our life now, we can make a good name with Jehovah God. On this point, interestingly, Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 1 says this, and I quote, "A good name is better than good oil, and the day of death is better than the day of birth." End of quote. Well, that's kind of odd, isn't it, when you think about it? The day of death is better than the day of birth. I mean, think about the birth of a young baby. We're all so happy when we hear about the birth of a baby. We're happy for the mom, for the dad, for the family. We're happy for the grandparents. How in the world is it possible that the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth? Well, the answer is because at birth, a person has no established reputation. Our life course will result in either a positive or a negative reputation. But for those who have established a good name with God, the day of death is indeed, in that respect, better than their day of birth. So the point is, while none of us can change our past, it can't be done. By the way we live our life right now, going forward, each of us, all of us, have the opportunity to make a good name with Jehovah God. Knowing about the sure hope of the resurrection should also provide each of us with a real incentive to want to learn and to want to do God's will. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 58 makes this point, and it says, and I quote, "Therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always having plenty to do in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in connection with the Lord." Think about those words for just a minute. Steadfast, immovable, having plenty to do in the work of the Lord. Who does that remind you of? That's Boyd Endecott, isn't it? On this point, one more Boyd story, if I may. As I already mentioned previously, Boyd, over the years, he drove thousands of miles to his secular job in Oklahoma City, and yet he lived in Clinton, Oklahoma. And while Boyd regularly did that Monday through Friday, there was absolutely no doubt what he would be doing Saturday morning. And that is sharing in the field ministry with his family. This really was an important thing to Boyd. It's interesting, one sister wrote me earlier that to this very day, Boyd and his focus on Saturday morning field service affects her, so she gets out. Even James, Boyd's son, and I were talking this week, and he shared it did not matter. There's rain, there's snow, there's ice. Boyd and the family were going out in service on Saturday morning. And that's what I remember. I remember working with him and his family, and I have many fond memories of Saturdays in the early 70s and working in Custer and Dewey County. And I thank them for that. But you know, as I look back and recall those moments, there was never a question. I remember specifically thinking there was never a question if Boyd was going out in field service this Saturday. But yet at the same time, I do remember at times, as I'm with the Endecotts and others in the back of that green Dodge Dart or their Chevrolet Impala, I remember thinking maybe in Dewey County or Rules, it's like, yeah, Boyd's going out on Saturday, but I'm thinking by Saturday afternoon, it's like, how long are we going to stay out in service today? Well, thinking about that scripture, Boyd was steadfast, immovable, always having plenty to do in the work of the Lord. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 11 also provides a nice reminder for each of us at this time. It says, keep encouraging one another and building one another up. So when we think about that verse, we can use this occasion of Boyd's memorial service in the days, the weeks, and the months ahead to comfort our friend Nancy, to comfort James and Karen and John and their families. As fellow believers, we each can remind one another of our sure hope, and thus provided the needed emotional support which we all need in these last days. And you know, each of us can receive and even offer this encouragement by prayerfully relying on Jehovah. He is the one who gives us the needed strength until he provides permanent relief from death in the very near future. This term, permanent relief, that we reference, it's described beautifully in various parts of the Bible. But I'd like to share one final scripture for today that Boyd himself was so familiar with that he could quote it word for word. It's found at Revelation chapter 21 and verse 4, and maybe you too can quote that scripture word for word. At Revelation chapter 21 and verse 4, it says, and I quote, "And he will wipe out every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be any more. The former things have passed away." What a beautiful scripture that is. Can you visualize for just a moment a young Boyd there at that time? Can you do that? Just think about it. The next words that Boyd will hear is Jesus saying, "Come on out." In fact, when we think about Boyd's next day alive, it will be the very best day of his entire life. The earth at that time, oh my goodness, the earth at that time will be filled with joy as never before. Just visualizing that future and meditating on it and pondering that. And the miracle of the resurrection should comfort all of us who have lost loved ones in death. Clearly, all praise should go to our great God, Jehovah, as he offers each of us comfort during this difficult time, but yet he also extends to us the future sure hope of the resurrection, a resurrection of our friend, Boyd Endecott. Let's turn our attention back to our chairman, Brother Patterson.
Thank you, Brother Hollingshead. We appreciate that encouraging, comforting discourse based on the comforting words in the Bible. We want to let everyone know, all almost 600, maybe more in attendance, that the Endecott family thanks you for being here. They thank you for the kind words of encouragement, the text, all the loving things you've said. They really enjoy that, and it makes them feel good. Appreciate that. Would you like to talk with them afterwards? Well, after this program, we're going to have a few minutes after, we're going to have a wonderful video. You'll enjoy it. If you're able to stay on, you won't regret it. But then after that, about 2 o'clock, we're going to post the Zoom IDs and passwords for meetings for the family. The family invites you. They warmly welcome you. They encourage you to come see them on Zoom, to talk with them, and to have that interchange of encouragement. So we'll post it briefly now, just so you can see it. Maybe you've already been able to write it down. But write that down, and we'll post it again right after our song and prayer. And so write that down, and feel free to go in and out, come as you go, or as you'd like. And that way you can have some time with the family. Also, if you have any stories, pictures, words of encouragement, or even videos, messages to share with the family, please send that to weloveyouboyd@gmail.com. Also, if you did not receive a program, Brother Carter has posted a link to one in the chat. So you'll click on that and download the program. You may have already received one as well, but just in case you haven't. To conclude this part of our program, we're going to sing a song and then have a prayer by Brother Jeff Pryor. Now, we're not really going to sing this song, but we're going to listen to the vocal renditions of a beautiful, comforting song. It is song number 151, He Will Call. So we encourage and all to enjoy this.
Life like a mist appears for just a day, then disappears tomorrow. All that we are can quickly fade away, replaced with tears and sorrow. If a man should die, can he live again? Hear the promise God has made. He will call, the dead will answer. They will live at his command, for he will have a longing for the work of his own hand. So have faith and do not wonder, for our God can make us stand, and we will live forever as the work of his own hand. Friends of our God, though they may pass away, will never be forsaken. All those asleep who in God's memory stay, From death we will awaken. Then we'll come to see all that life can be. Paradise eternally. He will call, the dead will answer. They will live at his command. For he will have a long end for the work of his own hand. So have faith and do not wonder, for our God can make a stand, and we will live forever as the work of his own hand.
All right, friends. Well, as mentioned, in about a few minutes, there's going to be a nice video that's played that you will definitely enjoy. And then after that video, we'll show you how you can be able to access this video. At this time, we're going to go ahead and post the Zoom meeting IDs so that after the video and the program is over with, you can visit the family. We'll leave this up for the next few minutes. You may notice that on the program it says 2 o'clock. Well, because of the time, the video, the link to the one that's going to be shown, it'll just be right after. You can stay on, we'll make an announcement, and then the family will get right into their meeting rooms. Friends, at this time, we're going to go ahead and see and watch an encouraging video with highlights of the life story of Brother Boyd Endecott. I think you'll really enjoy this. It'll kind of bring some encouragement to you. Please watch.
Is it possible to tell a person's life story in a few minutes with just some photos and music? Can a child ever really know their parents? Of course, the answer is no. But I'm going to do the best I can. I hope you learned something about Boyd. I know I did. He was the eldest of 4 children. He grew up in Oilton, Oklahoma, where his father bought a load of used lumber for $40 and built their house. He built it on the lease, on the hill south of Oilton, and when they moved out years later, he sold it for $100. Growing up, Dad enjoyed hunting, fishing, and exploring with his lifelong friends, Jim and Tim Arnold. I am named after Jim. In high school, he was very busy. He was on the student council, honor society, voted most likely to succeed. In his senior year, he was the editor of the yearbook and all-district tackle in football. He also worked in the local pool hall where he played the house stick. When pool sharks would come to town, they had to play the house stick. They regularly lost. He earned a football scholarship for Northern Oklahoma Junior College. There he met Mom and they were married. He graduated junior college, and it wasn't too long before I was in the picture. He continued his education at OU, but now he had to support a family, which he did by working at a Skelly service station in Edmond. To earn extra money, he was on call at night as a wrecker driver. At that time, before seatbelts and safety glass, it was often a gruesome job. Before too long, there were 5 in the family. Mom had studied the Bible, and Dad started to study the Bible to see what was going on. He studied first with Ted and Joyce Christ until they left for circuit work, then with Murray and Mary Ann Croy. Dad joined Mom as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. This is the first Kingdom Hall we attended, the North Unit. We didn't build this hall, but we did help when it was hit by a tornado in the late 60s. In the meantime, Dad continued to enjoy things he always did, like being a cowboy, hunting, and fishing. Soon a congregation was formed in Edmond and construction began on a new Kingdom Hall on the corner of 2nd and Story. In this photo we see Dad, Murray Croy, Joe Bob Watson, Frank Hurd, and Don Thompson. Here are some of those same brothers joined by Ron Rayburn as the last block is laid. I got to help a lot on that Kingdom Hall even though I was only about 8. Here is our family then. It shows everyone's personalities. It was about this time that the conventions began having Bible dramas, and Dad was in the first one. He's somewhere in this picture. He really enjoyed the privilege of attending 2 weeks of Kingdom Ministry School in Pittsburgh. This is one of his instructors, Albert Schroeder. It was during this time, Mom and Dad developed some lifelong friendships. Here we have Ron and Mary Rayburn and Joanne and Bobby Pryor. Dad wanted to serve where the need was great, and this is our going away party before our move to Clinton. This is our first home in Clinton. The first of many gatherings at their house is shown in these photos. Almost the entire congregation was there. A special pioneer couple, the Sandos, and Bible students, Daryl and Raylyn King. This was the Kingdom Hall when we first arrived. The walls leaked when it rained, there was no air conditioning, and the restrooms were one on each side of the stage. It was a public event to go to the bathroom. So immediately Dad began helping to upgrade this building. It took several years to get it to the point that wasn't ideal, but presentable and suitable. A few notable events happening during those years. Dad often performed baptism. Here Dad baptized Daryl King, and Raylyn is waiting her turn. They went on to be true Christians and the backbone of the congregation. Raylyn still is. Even though we were busy with theocratic things, there were many infamous camping trips. Sunburns and thunderstorms were common. But despite bad weather and exhaustion, we always had a good time. Over the years, families moved in and there was growth in the territory, and the congregation grew. There were special events like weddings and graduations. Dad was involved in all those things. He wrote this to Valerie Bates at her graduation. He also worked not just on his own Kingdom Hall, but others as well, like this one in Alva. My time in Clinton came to an end as I went to Bethel, and shortly thereafter Mom and Dad moved to Tuttle. This is the going away get-together in their house. It was a very much larger gathering than the first one. In Tuttle, Karen graduated high school. Not too long after that, Debbie and I married, with my father giving the talk. He was very nervous. Soon John graduated high school and shortly thereafter was off to Bethel. I don't have a lot of pictures from Tuttle, but it is certain their house was always a place for people to come, and they made many, many close friends. This is their going away party. The banner says, "We're going to miss you, Karen and Nancy, and even you, Boyd." They moved to Chickasha, and during the first years there, Dad retired. John and Nelda married, and Megan came along. Dad also added to his group of spiritual daughters. They remodeled and enlarged the Kingdom Hall and continue to have many good friends from there. During these years, Karen met Sean and they were married. Mom and Dad enjoyed their time in Chickasha and celebrated their 40th anniversary there. Not too long after that, we saw the need to plan for the future. So they reluctantly left Chickasha and moved to El Reno. This was their first move where the need was theirs, and not the congregations. Dad continued adopting spiritual daughters. Megan married, and Dad enjoyed being in another Bible drama. About this time, Karen and Sean graciously moved in with Mom and Dad to help out. A few years later, Lachlan was born. Mom and Dad celebrated their 60th anniversary with good friends. Around this time, Dad's age began to show, and he had a couple of incidents in his van, so he stopped driving. About then, Ren was born, and they developed a especially close bond. This is classic Ren in front of about 100 people. To improve his health, Dad began a regular exercise routine at the local college, where they recognized his amazing accomplishments on the stationary bike in a formal presentation. For the past 30-something years, we made an annual fishing trip to Lake Texoma. Dad cherished those to the very end. One of the last trips included his great-grandson. As his health declined, doctor's visits became more and more frequent. When he could no longer work out at the college, he began walking in the neighborhood. This became increasingly hazardous because of difficulties keeping his balance on inclines. He suffered several falls. During this time, I took him to visit his childhood friend, Jim Arnold. They really enjoyed that day together. He also stayed in touch with other longtime friends. Although Dad could no longer safely walk through the neighborhood, he was determined to be active and wore a path in the backyard. He also enjoyed Ren and all his spiritual daughters. All of his chocolate bar girls should be happy to know he was loved to the end. This family is completely gone now, like so many others. And this family has seen two members fall asleep in death, Nelda and Dad. Is that all there is? This may be how we remember my dad, but that is not how Jehovah remembers him. Job 14, verses 14 and 15 says, "If a man dies, can he live again? I will wait all the days of my compulsory service until my relief comes. You will call and I will answer you. You will long for the work of your hands." And Job 33, verse 25 says, "Let his flesh become fresher than in youth. Let him return to the days of his youthful vigor." Jehovah does not forget.
Well, I told you it was worth staying around for. What a nice video. Would you like to see the video at another point or time? You may have already received the link, but if you haven't, at this point, you can actually go to YouTube and in the search bar, just type Boyd Endecott, and that video will be right at the top. If you have received the link, feel free to share it with your friends and other family members who haven't been able to receive one. Now, at this time, we're going to go ahead and post the Zoom IDs, meeting IDs, so that you can visit the family and talk with them and have words of encouragement. We're going to be logging into those shortly. So feel free to come in and out, come as you go, come as you like, that you feel comfortable with. We want to thank all for being here, and the family thanks you and appreciates your love and support for Boyd, Nancy, James, John, Karen, and the rest of the family.